Hey everybody, it's Susie McMahon coming to you with our, oh goodness, I can't even remember my name. It's my virtual book club, Susie L. McMahon's book club. And I am here tonight with our featured author, Christine Reed, and she's even in a remote place in Colorado right now. I'm going to have her tell you all about it. I wanted to give a couple of minutes for people to realize, oh, it's 5 o'clock in mountain time or 7 o'clock and East Coast. And then we'll just get started. Christine, how are you doing tonight?
Amazing. How are you?
I'm good. I was telling Christine, everybody, that I've dropped the ball on a lot of stuff because I was traveling too much. So somebody's there that says, Facebook user, hi Susie, hi Christine, tell me what your name and where you're watching from. And anybody else, as you come on, you should give StreamYard the permission to use your name. You're not signing up for anything, but you'll see in the upper part of the video, it says grant StreamYard permissions. If you do that, I can then know who is watching. And whoever's watching is in Charleston, which is where I just came from. So let me get on here so I can try to read comments too. And then I'm going to get started with reading Charleston, which is where I just came from. I always do that. I think I have the volume off on my phone and I don't. So anyway, so everybody, this is Christine. She reached me, gosh, I can't remember when it was, and had heard. How did you how did you find me first? And then, if you even remember, because that was really good research on your part. Because I'm not like, I'm not like Oprah or anybody like that.
I think I was just looking for book clubs and I found yours, and then I saw it was linked to like your travel page, and I thought maybe you would be interested.
Yeah. Well, it worked out. I was interested, and we are interested, and here we go. You guys, I'm going to read the back cover. Hold on just a second, Christine. Is there a bio in here on the front or?
On the back cover by my picture.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure. So as people are rolling in, make sure to tell me where you are. So Christine and I know, somebody said perfect match between Travel Colorado Book Club and Christine. So here we go. Christine discovered long distance backpacking while surfing the internet at work. She decided that day to attempt to through hike the Appalachian Trail. One adventure led to another, and a few years later, she set out on the Wonderland Trail in Mount Rainier National Park. Her rugged outdoors woman persona started as a joke, a nod to the outdoor adventurer that she wished to be. But in the years since, she has come into her own as a backpacker, a rock climber, and a trail runner. This book is a testament to the decision to name who you want to be and make it so. So that is Christine. And Christine, welcome. Just say hi to everybody and tell everybody where you are right now. And go for it about where you are in Colorado right now.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm coming to you guys from just at the base of Horn Peak in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. So if my internet connection is not super great, that's why. And it is outside a little town called Westcliff in Colorado, which is about an hour and 10 minutes from Salida. Salida is the next biggest town you might have heard of. And it's about 3.5 hours south of Denver. So I came out here to work on a new book and just kind of have some solitude, which has been lovely. It's beautiful out. It snowed 3 times in the last 10 days. Wow. So I got to winter a little bit early this year.
Fantastic. And I see that several people are watching. I have Angela watching as she's trying to take off on a flight away from Costa Rica, I believe, back to the States. And Shoshana is watching from Dallas. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And please feel free to write any questions you might have. Let's make this a real interactive conversation tonight. And I do want to start off, Christine, with one of the questions that was sent in beforehand, before the meeting. And this is from my friend Melissa, who helps me co-facilitate this from time to time. First of all, she wanted to thank you for your service as a military child. It is all, having your father in the service is an experience that only you can experience in other people that are military families. So thank you so much for that. The question that she had is, do you think that there was anything in your life of maybe moving around and having your father in the military that possibly affects or created the lifestyle that you currently live, or that you currently, or what led you to where you are right now, I think is a better way for me to say that.
Yeah, I absolutely think that had something to do with it. We moved states every 3 to 4 years when I was growing up. But even when we lived in the same state for 3 years, we would move houses, once or twice in 3 years. I just don't, nothing ever really felt like home to me because we moved so much that it was kind of like wherever we were was just where I was. And it's very funny because my dad really had a hard time with me wanting to move and run around and do all these things in my early 20s. And I just had to say to him at some point, like, I'm this way because of you, right? Like, you did this to me. And I think in some ways I was really searching for a place that felt like home. And it took a lot of running around and going different places to realize that I may never have that feeling of home. But I also don't know what that feels like. So maybe I do have a feeling of home and I just don't recognize it. But I definitely think that moving around has made me a little bit, a transient spirit, but also harder to connect with people because I've not had a lot of relationships that have lasted more than a couple of years in my whole life. So,
yeah. Interesting. Angela, since she's watching before her flight takes off, posted a question and I wanted to go ahead and ask you, Christine. She asked, did you always want to write, or what led you to put pen to paper? I think I know, but what's your answer, Christine?
I did not always want to write. I always enjoyed writing in school, but it wasn't something I was passionate about. But when I hiked the Wonderland Trail and I came off the trail with that feeling of just like, I think I need to tell this story of like being alone and thinking that I was alone in my aloneness. Because I realized on the trail that I was not alone in my aloneness, that we're all feeling alone. We all feel self-doubt. We all like worry about who we are in the world and have these questions. And it wasn't until I went on the trail and I talked to so many other people that I felt like were experiencing a lot of the same things I was, that I realized like we are all in this kind of experience, having the same human experiences. And that I wanted to share that. I wanted to share my story because it might let someone else feel a little bit less alone.
That's beautiful. Angela says she loves it. Thank you so much. And something that you said is something that I'm kind of experiencing a little bit in the transition in my life right now. Being blessed by having a home here in Parker, Colorado, and then also in South Carolina, and gradually going through the transition of spending more time in South Carolina, trying to establish myself and make friends there. It's a really weird concept because when I come back to Colorado now, I feel like a guest. It's really bizarre and it's a little offsetting. And speaking of Colorado, I am one of those women that has always wanted to do what you have done. I think I might, or what you're doing. Every single summer I've been here, gosh, I don't even know how many years I've been in Colorado, but every single summer I say, okay, this is the year you're going to climb a 14er, or this is the year you're going to hike more. And every summer goes by and I don't do what I think I want to do. Literally, you made the decision researching online, and then you did the Appalachian Trail. Tell me a little bit about your feelings or how did you gain your confidence to keep going and to do it again even?
I think to go on the Appalachian Trail, one of the things was that I was just really unhappy in my life. And I looked at these people who were talking about the AT online, and they talked about how it changed them and how they grew and how like just life-changing the experience was. And I thought, I want my life to change. And so here's something that I can do. And like, I was scared. It was really scary. But I think even, that was 6 years ago. And even more so now, we have so many online communities full of amazing women that are doing super brave things and hard stuff that you wouldn't even think about doing. And they're just talking about it like it's a normal thing. And so it's easy to, I think, normalize some of these things that seem really scary when you talk to a bunch of people who are doing them. And so that was a big part of it for me, was just reading people's blogs, finding other people that were interested in the Appalachian Trail and reading their stories. And that is one reason I wanted to write the book too, was to share that story of like, I'm just a regular person. Like, I wasn't an athlete. I wasn't raised doing outdoors things. And I just decided I wanted to be a person who did those things. And to become that person, like, the first step is just to do the things. And there are some things that come across as like really approachable, and sometimes you need a friend to support you. And like, Lindy is one of the people in the book, my best friend. She lives in Denver. And last year she wanted to hike her first 14er. And so we spent the entire summer hiking every weekend to get her ready to hike her first 14er. And I don't think she would have done it if she didn't have somebody to like go through that process with, right? Like, there's certain things that we are ready to strike out on our own to do. And sometimes like you need support, and that's totally fine too.
Exactly. And there was some time, my family, I have 3 boys and my husband, and I would say my oldest, he's going to University of Colorado Boulder, and he definitely is doing a lot more of the rock climbing and things like that. He I think it's a good thing, or then it's a bad thing. He always waits until he's back home before he posts a picture of what he has done. And the most recent one was him basically hugging a rock, and his comment was, slippery snow is scary. And he was above 14,000 feet at the time. So my heart as a mom just sunk. But I know that he has that adventure spirit in him, and my other 2 sons have it as well. And I have it, and I have hiked a lot, just not as far. So maybe that is, I need to find someone who's willing to go on the journey with me, like you said. So thanks for that. So another question popped up here in the comments is, did you have an outline for writing? I know you had your journals and your entry, your journal entries are almost whimsical, in my opinion, compared to the memoir. And so outline, did you have that? And how did you make the transition in your writing? Like, the tone is different, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I actually didn't keep a journal on the trail at all. I decided I was going to write on the last day that I was hiking. So I quick on a map that I was carrying, like, made a few notes of like the people I met and stuff. The outline, I decided, so I knew right away that I wanted the format to be like chapters about the Wonderland Trail and then chapters about my past before that. And so, because I had just gotten off the trail and I didn't take any notes while I was there, I wrote all of the Wonderland chapters first. And then I went back and decided what I wanted to include from my life before, and then figured out how to integrate them. There's a few tricks that maybe you wouldn't notice if you weren't paying attention for it. The Wonderland chapters are written in present tense, and the past chapters are written in the past tense. And that was mostly just to like differentiate. But that's interesting that you think they're more whimsical.
I think because of the unicorn signature and I don't know. It's, to me, I feel like it feels like a little bit of a different tone. It's enjoyable. It's, but it feels different to me. So I didn't realize that I thought you were journaling on your adventure. That would be hard to, don't you think it would be hard to actually write in your tent at night when all you want to do is sleep?
Yes. So I just hiked the Colorado Trail. I finished like September 20th, I guess a month ago now. And I did take notes while I was there, because I was on the Colorado Trail for 41 days. And I was like, I'm not going to remember 41 days worth of activities when I get done. And so I knew I needed to keep at least basic notes of like, did we see wildlife that day? Like, what was the hiking like? And who did we meet? And where did we, sleep and stuff like that? So I took some pretty basic notes. But there was several days that I didn't write anything. And then I had to go back 3 or 4 days later and be like, what did we do on Tuesday? And luckily the girl I hiked the first half with is an obsessive note taker. She's very detail oriented. And so we were able to piece it together between the two of us. But it is not what I want to do at the end of the day, to sit in my tent and write in a notebook. Like, it's just not my personality. I want to go to sleep or read a book, honestly.
Right, because you're tired. I mean, again, I wasn't hiking, but I just took a tour that was a combination of a bike tour and kayaking. And same thing, at the end of the day, I was staying in luxurious hotels and stuff, but at the end of the day, I was like, I am so tired. All I want to do is go to bed. A friend that is watching named Karen just wanted to thank you so much for sharing your adventure with us. Love the book and loved hearing about your adventure. Tell me what the most difficult part of writing your book was for you. What was the most challenging?
I would definitely say the editing process was the hardest. But I also think it's one of those, I kind of compare writing a book and getting a book to publishing to like climbing a mountain and all of the false summits that you experience along the way. Because you're writing. It took me a year to write the first draft. And when I finished, I felt this huge sense of accomplishment. Like, oh my gosh, I finally finished. Like I said, I was going to do this. It took me a year. Here I am holding it in my hands, like printed out. And I was very proud, but also immediately the sense of like, there's so much work still to do. And you've like reached the thing you've been working toward, and you just immediately have to go back to work. And so mentally, that's really challenging. But I think the editing process, just reading my own words back, was hard, but also rewriting. I've never really been an editor. When I was in school, I would just turn in first drafts of everything. So I never went through that process and like learned how to evaluate my own writing. And I kind of had this like, oh, like if I wrote it, how am I going to improve it? It's obviously the way I think it should be already. And so that was really hard for me. It took a lot of maybe swallowing my pride, asking other people's opinions. I definitely had a lot of beta readers, which I think was super helpful, because it is sometimes hard to look at your own work with any type of objectivity.
Absolutely. And Shoshana says the unicorn notes were fun. And then Melissa was saying she went through that. She recently published a booklet of poetry. And she said she felt the same way. She was sprinting towards a self-published date that she had, and that editing process is very difficult. Would you recommend the self-publishing process to other people, anyone listening or anyone considering doing some writing?
I have had a really good experience with it. I think that if you are the type of person who like enjoys a lot of different types of work, then it can be a really fun process. If you are the type of person who's really good at writing and doesn't know or want to do anything else, then definitely not, because there's so many other things you have to do. But I think I really learned a lot through the process, and I enjoyed the different steps. But it's also a financial investment, because when you get published with an agent and a publisher, they invest money in editing, and they invest money in graphic design, and they invest money in getting the print done. And if you do that all yourself, then you have to be willing to spend the money yourself if you want to have a good product. And I think that if you want your book to be polished and seem like a really published book, then unless you are a graphic designer, you have to hire a graphic designer and like hire an editor and go through all of those processes that the publisher would normally be paying for. So I would absolutely recommend doing it if you are willing to put in that amount of work and the financial investment. But if not, then trying to get an agent and a publisher and just letting it go at the writing portion. And then you have the chance to start writing your next book, and you don't have to wait until a year later to start writing your second book. So.
Right. And so you are currently writing. Can you share with us what you're writing about and what your plans are?
Yeah. So I am writing a second memoir. It's going to be a companion piece to Alone in Wonderland. So after writing Alone in Wonderland, but right before it published, I was diagnosed with a form of dysautonomia, which causes accelerated heart rate, difficulty breathing, profuse sweating, basically all of the things I described my hiking experience to be. were caused by this condition that I've had my entire life and didn't know about. So I found out about that in August of last year. And then I have sort of moved forward with my career as a hiker with new information, which has kind of changed how I see the world. So I'm going to write about my hike on the Colorado Trail, which I just completed, with this new lens, and talk about relationship to our physicality, and just how we move through the world as like bodies.
Interesting. Let me know when it's out. Okay. I would love to read it.
Sure.
A question that I had from Shoshana, you mentioned that your father had warned you about men and relationships. Do you think there's anything your parents could have told you that possibly would have changed your behaviors, or your activities? I, as a parent, am very interested to hear this answer, but I also am reflecting to my own college years and things like that. And I would have to say, I don't think that there's anything that would have changed what I experienced, even though I know, they were setting a moral compass for me, which I appreciate and reflect. But we all have little wild parts in our lives from the college years and right after, I think. So do you think if there would be anything that would have had a different outcome in your life?
I don't know. I think I credit my parents for doing a lot of things right. And, of course, we always have our like, wouldn't it have been nice things. But I think that one of the things my parents maybe took for granted is that they were modeling a really healthy, loving relationship for us, and not modeling how to find a really healthy, loving relationship. They kind of made it seem like it was something that was just going to happen and it would be easy because it seemed so easy for them. And they didn't really talk to me about like how to interact with boys at teenage years, right? Like how to assert myself, how to make clear what I wanted or needed or expectations. And honestly, I don't know that I knew those things. I didn't know what I wanted or needed. I just wanted to be loved the way that my dad loved my mom. And I didn't know how to make that happen. So I think maybe more like open conversation about how to decide what you're looking for and how to know whether you're getting it and how to have those hard conversations. Because I never saw my parents have hard conversations. Everything was always just like whimsically easy for them. And even if you ask my dad now, he's like, oh yeah, we always just got along. Everything was just always easy. We never had fights. And I'm like, that's not most people's experience. And it's definitely not a fair experience to set your kid up, especially your kid who's like me. I'm incredibly hard-headed. Like I'm very loud in your face. I have a big personality. I liked to be the center of attention from the time I was very young. And that's not the type of person who's just going to have easy relationships. I think sometimes it's you don't recognize that like your child is just a very different person than you are, and like they're going to move through the world differently, and things are not going to be the same for them as they were for you. Right. My parents were both like really agreeable, friendly, soft people that everybody loves, and like that's just not me. So I don't know that they could have known what to tell me.
Mm-hmm. I just want to let you know that Jennifer Daniels Neal, another entertainer and author, said thank you, Christine, for the answers to these questions. And another question came up to go back from kind of an emotional one to a more business-like one is, did you use a developmental editor? I don't know what that is. If so, how did you find one?
I did. So there's a couple levels of editing that you can use. There's like what I got was called a manuscript assessment, which is an editor who reads your entire manuscript, and then they don't give you edits on a line level. They give you edits on a big picture level. And I did do that. I used a woman, her name is Tracy Gold, and she did a really amazing job. I actually found her. So Lindy went to college for counseling, but she was in a bunch of literary groups at her school. And so when I got to that point, I asked her like, hey, do you know anybody who does editing professionally? And she kind of put out a call on her Facebook and had several people answer. So that's how I ended up finding this person. But if you know any other self-published authors, that's like a good resource to find editors, because you really want to get somebody through a referral, like get somebody who someone can tell you did a good job on their work. Because with editors, if you just start Googling like how to find an editor for my book, there's so many, and people run their own businesses. So they're small, so they don't have a lot of marketing. And then if you use an editing agency, that can be more expensive. And it's already pretty expensive. So I think definitely getting somebody through a referral is a great way to go. Find a book that you thought was good and ask that person who edited their book. That's a good way to go. And then I did also have like a line level, a copy editor at the end. So I had the developmental editor, then I did more rewriting. It was probably another 6 or 8 months before I got a copy editor for the final draft. And I used different editors for both.
Awesome. Also, somebody's recommending saying referrals of your local writers association is a good thing too. Now, a question that I had, or a comment that I wanted to make sure to read because it's I love it. Shoshana said the unicorn notes were fun, so I just wanted to share that with you. What was when I said what was the hardest part of writing, what would you say was the most emotional piece of your writing process? Did you find that it was like therapeutic as you wrote?
I did. And since I've never been a journal keeper, that was kind of a new experience for me. I think probably the most emotional experience. So I hiked the Wonderland Trail in August of 2018. And then I came back to Denver where I owned a condo and I was trying to sell it. And I remember sitting on the floor, the floor of my empty condo at like the coffee table. That was the only piece of furniture left. And it was kind of during the time when the Me Too movement was just starting to get really kicked off. And Christine Blasey Ford gave her testimony to Congress. And I remember listening to her testimony and being just completely like awash in emotion. And that's when I decided that I really wanted to include in my story about sexual assault. It's not something that was originally going to be part of the story. And I just felt like when I listened to her testimony, it gave me a lot of insight into my own experience. And I had not really ever told anybody that I had been sexually assaulted before that. And obviously it happened a decade before. So it was just something I didn't really identify. Like I knew it had happened. It was in the past. It wasn't something I ever thought about. And listening to her testimony, like made me realize how important it was to tell that part of my story. And I will say that like, since the book is published, so many women have reached out to me about that and like how powerful it was for them to read it and how grateful they were to me for sharing it. Yeah. And it was not necessarily a hard thing to write once I decided that I wanted to include that. But it was definitely emotional just to go through that process and also to have my friends read it and give me like editorial feedback. I feel like everyone was kind of trying to like kid gloves on that section of the book. There would be like notes on every page except for that one. And I was like, no, you have to like, I need your help here too. So even just like having those tough conversations, and one of my really good friends who read the book, like came back to me and said, I didn't know that. And I was like, no, of course you didn't. Like, I didn't tell you. Why would you know that? So just the conversations that have come up since then have almost been like the more emotionally powerful experience than writing it, but I had to write it for that to happen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your courage. People are writing notes on the side about wow, thank you for your courage. So I have a little technical issue. I need to stand up and plug my computer in before it goes totally powerless. So give me just a second. I'm going to stand up and do that. But while I'm doing it, if you could just tell us the way you described how you don't take pictures when you're on a hike, or at the very beginning you weren't, because it doesn't capture the entire essence of where you are in that moment. That is something that I've experienced so much. I mean, you can be walking on the beach, the shores of a beach, or you can be in the mountains, or you can be looking off a cliff in Santorini, and that still photo, even video, doesn't give you the energy that you feel. Can you talk about that a little bit while I go plug in my computer, and I'll come back just explaining how frequent that happened, and if that continues to happen to you. And I'll be right back. Go for it.
Totally. Yeah, when I first got into hiking, I, probably had some crappy flip phone from like 2005. And I took a few photos, off the edge of things that I hiked in Arkansas and stuff. And just looking back at them doesn't make me feel anything. You know what I mean? Like, I would take these photos, and number one, I'm not a photographer. So like, I didn't understand lighting. I didn't understand like how to take a good photo. And then of course I'm using like an old phone. And so that's not going to give you a good quality photo anyway. But yeah, I took photos of things, and then I would look back at them and just go like, I don't really like, this photo's not doing anything for me. And honestly, like, if I wanted to look at a photo of this view, we have the internet, and someone else has taken an actual good photo of this view that I could look at. Yeah. And so it's just like, why waste my time when I could spend my time here present looking at the thing and have the memory? And then if I want to go look at a photo, I can find one, I'm sure. Definitely over the years, like with social media and the fact that like my promotion of this book has been largely social media based, I kind of have to take photos now. And I've come to enjoy the experience of taking photos and like to include that in my experience without it being a distraction. And it's nice to have the photos. Of course, I have a much higher quality camera now than I did back then. But even so, like there's photos that I take and I look back and I'm just like, this just it didn't really capture the moment,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, speaking of moments, every time we get together, I usually have a surprise guest, and today is a surprise guest because I haven't told anyone that this wonderful woman is joining us, and I can't wait to introduce Christine, and I'm going to just go ahead and bring you on. Are you ready? I can't wait to introduce Christine to Sarah Macrocrow. Welcome back to the book club, Sarah.
Thank you, Susie. Yeah. Hi, Christine.
Hi.
So, Sarah, I believe that, oh my gosh, Catherine? No.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was like trying to remember who.
Yes. I know it's been a while, right?
No, it has been a while. So why don't you reintroduce yourself to both Christine and the group that's watching. We are going to be reading your book next. And then in a moment, I'm going to have Christine ask Sarah a question and Sarah ask Christine a question. So be thinking about that, Christine, while I have Sarah reintroduce yourself. Do you have a copy of your book handy? My whole house is upside. Yes, so that you can show the cover. Yeah. Okay, so definitely show the cover. And Sarah, you have the floor. Go for it.
Okay. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'm Sarah Macrocrow, and my novel is The Wrong Kind of Woman. And it came out in late 2020, so pandemic. It is kind of a campus novel. It's set in 1970 on the campus of a fictionalized Dartmouth college before coeducation, at a time when Dartmouth and schools like it were more like Animal House, I would say. And it's really the story of three people who they're grappling with the death of the same person in very different ways. And at the heart of the story, my main character is Virginia, who's a 40-ish widow. Her husband has died very suddenly, and he was a history professor at this small college. And as she's just muddling along and adrift, she starts to become friends with some women that she knew, but she was never friends with. And they're the 4 women faculty on campus. And with these new friends, she is kind of forced to reassess everything, and she starts to work with them to start to bring change in the form of the women's movement to their very traditional campus and small town. And so problems ensue. So that's one thread. And then the sort of background, because it is 1970 and 71, the background pressure on all these characters is the Vietnam War and all the stuff that goes along with that. So the draft and invasion of Cambodia and student strikes and protests and the way those were handled and more radical activism and even the women's movement starting to become more visible. So that's in the background, but it's definitely affecting these characters. So that's kind of a little thumbnail, I guess.
Thank you. And remind me, was this your debut novel or this was your second?
Yes, this is my first novel. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there's some sisterhood between the two of you with that. And we are going to read this, everybody, in the book club this month. So we are in October, and our meeting will be in November with Sarah. We need to talk about getting some orders of the book for anyone that doesn't already have it, and I'll take care of that on the Facebook page. But Christine, since you and Sarah just met each other, what question do you have for Christine? What question do you have for Sarah?
Yeah, for writing fiction, how do you map your characters so that they don't all turn into a little bit of you?
That's a really good question. And I don't actually have a good answer because I kind of just write and see what comes out. And, one of my characters in this book is a 20-year-old man. So I am, not any of those things right now. So, yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. If you stay with a character for a long time, you start to get to know them. You have like glimmers at first, and then slowly they come to you, and you start to think about, okay, like thinking of this character Sam, like what would he think? So he hears whatever song on the radio, it's 1970. What would he be thinking? How would he react to that given his background? Like I don't create like there's some writers who create like lists of character traits and things like that, but I feel like I have to write to find out what I'm writing about, so I don't do those lists.
Gotcha.
I mean, later on I do get beta readers to weigh in and say, is this believable and that kind of thing. But I will say with that character, Sam, and a couple of other background characters, they just sort of appeared to me like almost fully formed. And that I was surprised by, because I have been writing fiction for kind of a long time, even though this is my first novel. So, that's one of those, I'm not a woo-woo kind of person, but that was kind of weird how that happened.
Woo-woo is great. I love woo-woo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've found, I can't figure out how many months have I been doing this, almost a year. So at least 12, April, May, June, July, August, gosh, about a year and a half. And I have found that a lot of authors say similar things to what you've said, Sarah, that the story just comes to you. And, I think if you're doing a historical fiction, you're obviously researching a lot of different facts. So something truly had happened, but the story part kind of just comes. And I find that really woo-woo and interesting as well. Sarah,
yeah.
Yeah. What question do you have for Christine, Sarah? I know you were watching in the background there for most of our conversation.
Yeah, I guess I have a couple questions, but one, that maybe this is even more of a comment, but I loved your comment about, the writing process, and maybe you were talking about publishing too, but the false peaks, because that applies to me with hiking when I'm like, oh, it's almost there. And it's like, oh no, let's go. We have so much more to do. But for writing, that's so true too, because you think, especially if it's a larger project like a memoir or a novel compared to an essay or a short story, you think you have this thing and it feels pretty finished. You've got this big like mess of pages or whatever, or you have the framework or whatever, but it can take like so much longer. You think you have it, but you don't. And it takes like, I don't know, rejections from agents or whatever to make you realize I'm really not finished yet. And then that's not to mention the whole publishing process, like, if you're trying to get an agent, if you're submitting to contests, like all of those things. It's such a, I think with both creative nonfiction and with fiction. It's a long process. It's a long process learning to write. It's a long process putting your stuff out there. I was supposed to ask you a question and I've just been like talking, but do you want to talk about that a little bit more? Sorry for talking too much.
No, it's totally fine. Yeah, I mean, there's like the whole process up to getting it published, and it took me 2.5 years for like writing, editing, hiring a designer, dealing with getting the pages put together and the print job and all of that. And then it printed, or like I sent out the first copies at the end of January, actually on my dad's birthday. And then it's been nothing but work since then, right? Like there was the day I held my book in my hands for the first time and I was like, oh my gosh, I've given birth. Like this is the thing. And now I have to raise it, right? I have to like do all this marketing and do these book club meetings and do interviews on podcasts and constantly be reaching out to people. Hey, are you interested in my book? Can I talk to you about it? And trying to get it into stores and do all the other things. So in the process of like, now I'm at the beginning of a new mountain. I'm starting to write another book. I'm still like bringing this one along. So it just becomes like one more thing.
Yeah.
But even this time around, I came to this cabin for a 3-week writing retreat. And I'm, 10 days into the writing retreat, and I've probably only written 2 chapters because I've spent so much time like trying to figure out what the format of the book is going to be and outlining and just trying to decide what goes in and what is not and how best to tell the story and what I really want to say with the story. And it's funny because I've been thinking about this book for 6 months now and thought I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted it to be about. And even on the Colorado Trail, stuff would happen and I would go, ooh, that definitely needs to go in the book. Then I got here and I was like, I just need more organizing time, more time to just be in my thoughts about it before I'm ready to really like start putting words down.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you, 2 questions. One is, how do you separate your sort of marketing brain from writing brain? Because those are almost like polar opposites skills, because writing brain is like kind of vague and, you just have to let things come, and marketing, you have to be like focused and thinking about other people and that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's hard. Definitely. And especially after Alone in Wonderland published in January, I didn't start writing again until May. So I gave myself like 3.5 months of just focus on marketing. And I got really good at it and would spend 8 hours a day doing outreach and just, interviews and those kind of things. And it's very to-do list oriented. And that's how my brain works. And so honestly, like the writing is probably the harder part for me, because it is like, you have to turn that other part off and really get deep in your thoughts. Are you familiar with Deep Work? It's a book by Cal Newport.
Oh yes, Cal Newport. Yeah.
He just talks about how you have to like get in the zone, essentially. Like you have to give yourself a certain amount of time of like non-productive attempting to get to the point of deep work. And setting that time aside, it's really easy to, if you're like a productivity based person, to think, oh, I'm wasting time if you sit down and nothing is happening. And so I have to like train myself to be okay with like, I'm just going to sit here for 45 minutes. And if nothing happens, nothing happens. But my brain is working, even if I don't accept that it is, because nothing is coming out. I do find also like giving different locations. I definitely work more creatively when I want to write, if I'm at a coffee shop or the library or just anywhere that's not my house. But if I can do marketing work from home and it's no big deal like that, I can be very focused with that at home. But for writing, I really need to go to a different space.
It's so interesting, the different pieces that how our brains function, because I have this thing of I need to write first thing in the morning, very first thing before I do anything else. And then if I get to 8 o'clock and I looked at the newspaper or I was checking Instagram or whatever, my brain is like, oh, well, you're done, and that's not a productive way to do it. But there is something weird about either like going to a different place or going to a different room or something that like it can almost unlock something. It's kind of strange in a good way.
In a good
Well, it's
way.
almost I need other people around, so I feel guilty if I'm not working. So I go to the coffee shop where there's people around, and then I'm like, okay, I can't dick around and play with my phone because there's like people here and they'll know I'm not working.
Yeah. So you have to trick your brain in one way or another. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I have to wear these big headphones and play rain music because I can't stand to hear people talking while I'm
Because I know then you start listening to their conversation. And,
right.
Which can also be, it can be helpful to eavesdrop. That's one thing I really missed during the pandemic was being able to eavesdrop on other people. Just like think about like, what are they talking about? And why are they talking about that? Yeah.
That's when I'm traveling, I'm always wondering when I look around at other travelers or people on a ferry or people on the plane, I'm like, what's their story? And we were at a big luncheon at a resort on Santorini, and there was this one man there, and several of us, several of the other travel agents were saying, we've got to find out a story, but none of us had the courage to go up and say, what is your story? Tell us. So speaking of marketing, and I got a question again from Jennifer a second ago. She said, how can we help you both get the word out? What do you need from us? I wanted to share something because I know Jennifer hasn't gotten your book yet, Christine, or I think she's ordering yours right now, Sarah, and I put in how to order yours, Christine, aloneinwonderland.com, correct? But in the book, when she sends it out, or it's sent out as this beautiful little cover of the book, and then on the back is a, did you love Alone in Wonderland? And it talks about tell your friends. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to read this real quick. This book was self-published, and I'm counting on you to help me spread the word. Here's how. Number one, the best way to share is directly. Text, call, email, or DM your friends, family, and fellow adventurers. Tell them about the great book you just read and send them the link to Alone in Wonderland. Social media is number two. That is great. Share a photo with you with a book in your hand, and tag Rugged Outdoors Woman. Tell people that you love what you loved about it and share the link. And then also I have learned over the last year is tell you, the authors, review your book on goodreads.com. Join the mailing list is another way, or send a message directly to ruggedoutdoorswoman@gmail.com. So with that, is there anything else the two of you would add on how we can help support you as readers? And then I have one final question and we'll wrap it up after that. How can we help you? Christine, go first.
Yeah, I mean, all the things that you said there. The other thing that would be really helpful is if you requested your local library or your local bookstore to carry Alone in Wonderland, as well as if you belong to any hiking groups, women's groups, some group of ladies who might be interested in having a talk or a hosted hike or a Zoom call, or hosting a book club, put me in contact with them. That would be amazing.
Hosted hike. I'm going to talk to you about that.
Yeah, in Colorado, if you have.
Yeah, how fun that would be. Cool.
Definitely.
And Sarah, what do you have to add?
Well, I would definitely add requested at your library or bookstore. Those are really good ideas. And libraries, they love to hear from patrons. Most of them have a budget for requests, and not all, but many do. And so that is great. And Goodreads and Amazon reviews are so helpful. And of course, social media, I do spend a lot of time on Instagram. I love connecting with other bookish people and other writers. And yeah, it's nice to see other people's recommendations and their book photos and all those things. So yeah, all of those things.
Wonderful. And then that's my final question. Before I ask, I just want to thank both of you for joining me tonight. Christine, thank you so much for reaching out to me. I really appreciate you doing that, because otherwise I wouldn't have known about it. And I am inspired, and I really enjoyed your memoir. Sarah, I can't wait to read yours and have our conversation later. What is on your book stand? If you have 20, don't give me every title, but not your book stand, but your nightstand. What are you currently reading, Sarah? And then I'll have Christine answer next.
I just finished Matrix by Lauren Groff, which is very different from what she's written before. It's about a 12th century French nun who's running an abbey, a convent in England. So it's quite different. It's not contemporary, but it is so good. I can't say enough good things about it. So it's not on my nightstand anymore because I finished it and I passed it along to someone else.
Thank you. Christine, what are you reading?
I just heard about that book and I had put it on my list. So glad to hear another recommendation. I am almost done with On Love by Alain de Botton. Are you familiar?
Mm-hmm.
He's like a relationship and life therapist, and it's a love story, not love story. It's a novel about a relationship that starts and ends like a lot of relationships do, and just sort of like the process that we go through as humans in relationship, and like how we have that initial like high and spike, and then things settle out and we like start to get annoyed with the little things in our partner, and kind of just like how we deal with sharing space with somebody and the evolution of a relationship as it goes on. So it's kind of like an anti-romance novel.
That's fun. That's fun. Thank you, ladies, so much. We got to go a little extra. I hope I didn't hold you too long tonight. Went a little long, but I thought it was great conversation between the two of you. Again, thank you, Christine. Let's stay in touch. Let's figure out how to do a hosted hike next summer, maybe, if you're not in another part of the world. And Sarah, I look forward to our meeting in November. I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. Christine and Sarah hang out in the studio with me for just a minute. And everybody, if you need to, oh wait, real quick, Sarah, tell everyone how they can order your book directly from you.
Well, you can't order it directly from me, but you can order it. You can, of course, order it from Amazon. But if you would like independent, you can order it from any independent bookstore. Even if they don't have it in stock, they can get it. It's in their system or whatever. If anyone wants a signed copy, I could put that in your book club Facebook thing from Gibson's. That's definitely a possibility. Yeah, so it's available everywhere, basically, but you might have to order it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. You're welcome. Bye, everybody.